Hi everyone, Tracy DW here. In 1960, British Prime Minister Harold Maurice Macmillan, 1st Earl of Stockton, gave a speech that was eventually to become one of the defining moments of his career. This speech was so significant that he gave it on 2 separate occasions, in 2 different countries, and within this speech he asked a question that he already knew the answer to. It was a speech that embodied the recognition of Britain's waning presence as an imperial global superpower and an acknowledgement of its future role as a sovereign figurehead of state. Macmillan's speech today is more commonly known as the Wind of Change, and he made this speech during a tour of the British colonies across Africa. He was the first British Prime Minister to tour the African continent, and he gave his speech first in Accra, Ghana on the 10th of January and then again on the 3rd of February to the South African Parliament. The only thing that was different was the response from both his audiences. I featured the Wind of Change speech in 2 of my podcast episodes in Season 1. However, one of them stands out as the most popular, Wind of Change Expanded, where I give my analysis and my perspectives about this speech and place it within the context of the catalyst of global events that took place after World War II. In 1960, the Wind of Change was the wave of national consciousness across British and European colonies that became a resounding voice, demanding self-rule and repatriation. However, it also presented a crossroads, a choice of ideology that each of the newly formed independent states would have to make: democracy or communism. Macmillan's speech signified a position that Britain had not been in for more than 400 years, that of being able to instigate change while being totally powerless in directing its course or outcomes. The Wind of Change has become a metaphor to describe a phenomenon that would shape the world for a new age, that of the post-colonial era. Almost 60 years later, at the start of 2020, we are experiencing another wind of change, that of the COVID pandemic. And as before in 1960, it presents a crossroad where we're all questioning the validity of the ideologies that we've espoused to all our lives. We're challenging norms in the status quo and questioning which values are important to us. Repressed prejudices and phobias, as well as talents and aspirations, have risen to the surface, and many of us are re-evaluating our priorities in order to give ourselves the quality of life that we feel we desire and deserve. We have good intentions to sustain newly formed habits, but whether we can maintain them will be determined by what will be the new norm and whether we can define for ourselves what that new norm will be. However, there's no progress or change without struggle, and many of us have been thrown into a crucible of crisis and trauma where our norms can no longer be ignored, as there isn't the cushion of work, school, or socialising to protect us from the harsh realities of our home lives and our personal lives. Thus, this wind is revealing many hidden agendas, both good and bad. It has exposed the weaknesses in our dispositions as well as in our relationships, but it's also exposed some strengths that we are all nurturing and trying to reconnect one with another. We discovered the hidden gold mines of cleaner air and the sounds of nature, and what we took for granted we finally took notice of. And we all swore an oath that we would do better. Never before has the world been brought so closely together, and we can almost feel our interconnectedness, not just through social media, but also through meeting platforms such as Zoom. And within this virtual proximity, we all learn to adapt, and it is no longer invention that is the mother of necessity, but innovation, as what is tangible becomes more and more worthless and transient, while the virtual and the digital increase in value. The wind is such an appropriate metaphor for change. It is a force that is ever present, but is only seen through what it acts upon and manifests through, seeing only the impact, the effects, and the consequences. As we stood still, our normal distractions were removed, and we all saw that which has always been hidden in plain sight, the inequalities and injustices of our human existence. As we put on physical masks, we tore off metaphorical ones, and we braved the uncertain and the unknown. To march, to protest, to tear down statues, rename monuments, and spoke with our collective primal instinct. I can't breathe. Just as Macmillan feared the threat of communism towards Britain's colonies, governments of today fear the wind of the pandemic and its potentially devastating effects to our economy, our well-being, values, and our way of life. We are entering a new era, and the parallels are clear. As South Africa became a republic in 1961, Barbados becomes the same in 2021. Again, 60 years later. Just as Macmillan was criticised by conservatists who questioned the legitimacy of decolonisation and its impact on imperial interests, we see the rise of a new colonialism, fighting not for real estate and rare earth minerals, but for something far more precious, the right to occupy and harness our spiritual potential and our mental capacity. It is a fight for morality. Are Russia, China, and the Middle East just a physical manifestation of this struggle? Our destiny will not be determined by complaining or waiting for the wind to change direction, but it will be the way that we adjust our sails that will determine the direction that we take. This wind of change brings another wave of nationalism that is testing every nation on earth. The anti and pro-lockdowners, the pro and anti-vaccinators, the haves and the have-nots. Mounting national debt, higher living costs and increasing mental health issues, all working together to expose each country's great divide, with the great shift in wealth being the underlying narrative. It is no longer simply enough to believe in the idea of liberty and democracy. The time will come when each and every one of us will have to ask ourselves not, what do I believe in, but what am I prepared to stand for? The wind of change is blowing for a second time, putting on trial our way of life, but its purpose has always been the same, a struggle for the minds of men. Open your eyes and see, then choose.